the Amazon and Alphabet earnings came out the same day. I had a number of press calls about these Alphabet cloud numbers, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And it was really funny because I got these calls, and then 10 minutes later, the Bezos news dropped, and it was like the world stopped. So, we'll talk real quick about the numbers here, Pat, but I think what everyone's going to want to hear is your take on what's going on with Bezos' departure, Andy Jassy being named new CEO. But just first and foremost, Amazon, $125.56 billion in the quarter. Okay. This is a massive beat. And by the way, the first time the company actually hit over 100 billion in revenue in a single quarter. Big moment, again, got sort of usurped by other news that happened to come out from Amazon. Again, the earnings were just off the charts, over $14 a share versus a number about half that, $7.23. So, my immediate take, Pat, and, this was my commentary, whether it was on TV, whether it was on my research note, this earnings report, while great stuff, AWS grew 28%. That was considered a bad number because I think they were looking for like 29%. Yeah. Would have been estimated. But look, across the board, the results are good. Amazon's in a really good place. AWS is in a really good place. But the attention was all about Jeff Bezos. And I had a lot of chances to weigh in on this, Pat, but I'll give you the first stab at the Bezos Jassy discussion.
Sure. Listen, I do want to come back to the AWS discussion because I think it's important, if you don't mind. Sure. I just to put things into perspective. I know people like to focus on percentage growth, which I understand, but when you get to a certain number, that percentage growth does mean a little bit less, in my opinion. And when I look at how much AWS grew cloud revenue, it was they grew it $2.79 billion in the quarter, and they grew it $10 billion dollars to a $55 billion run rate, and delivered over 50% of the entire company's operating income, albeit at a smaller piece. And I think that's phenomenal. Should never get overlooked. I mean, sometimes we get fixated on percentage because it's easy, but we also know that to a certain percentage, I think that AWS might want to break out some of its fastest growing products. My guess is machine learning is a massive growth engine for them. Data analytics, that would be 70, 80, 90% year-on-year quarterly growth. Yeah. But on to Bezos. I mean, first of all, I don't think they could have picked a better person with Andy Jassy. He's incredible. I had the chance to meet him just once, but he's just such a no BS guy. 1 year, don't ask me why I did this, but I listened to 6 straight years of AWS reInvent, and the guy is so consistent. He is so customer focused, and I don't mean BS customer focused. I hear that word customer focused, and I yawn and I get bored. But this company really is building products for their customers. They're fact driven, and given that Andy Jassy was at the company almost as long as Jeff Bezos, I mean, they're kind of, I wouldn't call them two peas in a pod. Jeff's worth 1,000 times more than Andy, but it's not all about money. It's also about being there and being part of the culture. And I think Andy is almost as much about the culture as Jeff Bezos was. So I have confidence in it. Andy is going to have to think more and more about the softer side of the business, the factories that are out there. He's going to have to get involved in all of these nasty investigations that are out there. And that reminds me, while all this is going on and they're crushing it business-wise, Amazon created 400,000 jobs in 2020, and most of that was driven in terms of SMB, whether it's warehouse space or SMB sales. They not only crush it on that vector, but also on the the good neighbor variable as well.
Yeah, Pat. First of all, what you mentioned about AWS, I call it the law of large numbers. The growth is staggering. In terms of the Bezos thing, you kind of hit everything that I said on the head. It's going to be interesting. Jassy has earned this opportunity with the contributions that AWS has given to the overall bottom line of Amazon. In fact, it's many times propped up the overall company in a big way. That big $14 versus $7 beat has a lot to do with the contributions being made by AWS. One of the biggest kind of insider, things that rolls around about Jassy versus Bezos is Jassy's very hands-on. In the halls, they kind of talk about he still looks at every press release that goes out, very conscious of, what the company is, every new product. He's, very visible. Jeff has been much more of that sort of prolific brainchild that's kind of up in the turret, leading by example, but not necessarily by being in on every single little detail. So that pivot, seeing how he pivots to handle all that daily interaction, becoming a little bit more of that, that profile of the guy, not just leading the 12 billion a quarter, but the 125 billion a quarter overall Amazon. And as you mentioned it, the company gets a lot of grief for things it does, but it's been a big corporate citizen, especially in 2020, whether it was vaccine support, housing and HUD and urban development support. The company's been very involved in job creation, minimum wage support, sustainability. And yes, companies do ESG with the intention of improving their brand reputation, but that shouldn't be soured upon. We want companies that feel a commitment to give back to the society and to do more to help the community.